Hey, so has anybody ever told you that after 40, maybe in your 50s and 60s, you should stop lifting heavy weights to protect your joints? I know I certainly have. And on the outside, it actually makes a lot of sense, right? Because as we get older, our connective tissues become less elastic. We tend to bounce back a little bit slower from activity because our recovery processes are a little bit slowed down. But is this actually the case? That's what I plan to address in this video for you. Hey guys, my name is Aaron Kubitz, personal trainer at Functional Aesthetics EC, where we're blending science and innovation to help busy men in their 40s build muscle, shed fat, and perform better in their lives inside and outside the gym. Alright guys, so to make sense of this, to make my point, we're going to look at two hypothetical scenarios. We're going to look at the high intensity of 5x5 lifting, so 5 sets of 5 reps, which would be the heavy category, versus 100 reps of push-ups, right? So both of these have the potential to cause joint problems, but they do so in different ways. So first we're going to look at the 5x5. So 5x5, it's an acute stressor, right? There's going to be a lot more compressive forces on the joints and the potential for shear forces as well that, if done with improper form and inadequate recovery, can cause some problems. Now, the thing that was interesting to me as I was doing the research for this video was that in fact, not only are the compressive forces from lifting really heavy weights not bad for your joints, they are in fact really good for your joints, and movement in general and resistance training is actually very good for helping you deal with things like osteoarthritis. And then the reason for this is because cartilage, the cartilage in your joints, right, is what you call avascular. So without vascularity, right, without blood vessels. It doesn't have blood flow like muscles do going to it. So how does it get its nutrients to support its health and recovery? It gets this from compressive forces, from being activated, right, from having pressure and load put on it. In fact, according to Wolff's Law, our tissues adapt according to the stress that is placed upon them. So if you don't stress your joints out, if you're sitting at a desk all day, in fact, you're much more likely to have joint problems from sitting too much than you are from doing heavy deadlifts and heavy squats. Furthermore, as I've alluded to in some of my other videos, a popular saying among physical therapists is motion is lotion. What do they mean by this? They mean that every time you're moving your joints, it's increasing the output of synovial fluid. Synovial fluid is like oil for your joints. So if you're the Tin Man, you're putting oil on those joints to keep them lubricated. Well, with the body, you have inside of your joint something called hyaline cartilage. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but essentially it has a coefficient of friction that is even less than glass on glass. And then, if you put this synovial fluid in between there, it makes it super slick and lubricated so that you can endure repetition after repetition after repetition of running, of jumping and stuff, and being able to repair it. So, by moving your body, you are actually facilitating the repair process. With that being said, there are some cases when heavy lifting can be detrimental to your joint health in the long term. Number one is if you are executing the movement with improper form, right? So if you're lifting and you're losing your bracing in your torso, right? Let's say, for example, you're going down to the bottom of the squat, and when you get to the bottom, you don't have enough flexibility or mobility or flexibility in your hamstrings, maybe mobility in your ankles, or you have the anthropometric setup, ratios between your limbs, right? Such that it makes it really hard for you to get down all the way down to parallel or even go below. But you're trying to do full range of motion squats, which is good for building more muscle, right? And so you try to go down a little bit further, but because you don't have the mobility in the right areas, you do what is called the butt wink, right? Where your tailbone tucks underneath almost like a wasp trying to sting something, right? And what that does is places a tremendous amount of stress on your lower backs, especially in the ligaments there. So this could be a case where lifting really heavy loads could be very detrimental because you're putting all that strain on there in a compromised position. Now, the other instance of when this could be problematic is if you don't have, if you have muscular imbalances from doing too much of your favorite exercises at the expense of exercises that you're not as fond of. And as a little caveat here, I have actually created an ebook specifically designed to help you design your workouts in such a way to train your shoulders for balance, specifically to help get you that thoracic extension, because a lot of people, when they're trying to keep their shoulders healthy, they just do a bunch of stretches and rotator cuff exercises, which is actually later on in the process and is the icing on the cake. In fact, if you are training properly, you should not actually need to do very much direct rotator cuff work at all to keep your shoulders healthy, because the acts of actually just doing the compound lifts while being balanced, having your prime movers balanced, will keep the joint in proper alignment so that the rotator cuff doesn't have to act as a prime mover and bear more load than it's designed to, and it can act more in its stabilizing function. If you're interested in that, there should be the link for that in the description to download that guide. Otherwise, you can comment guide in the comments below and I can shoot that over to you as well. The last area where lifting really heavy can become problematic, especially as an older individual, guys 40, 50, and 60, is by lifting really heavy without adequate recovery in between workouts. So then this brings up the question, what is the adequate amount of recovery in between workouts? That'd be 2 to 4 days per week, depending on the workout split that you're doing. So if you're doing a full body split, i.e. training your entire body in each workout, that would be 2 to 3 workouts per week. Now, this is ideal for beginners or guys who are very busy, right? One of the reasons I've done some of these workout reviews in the past, and I've talked about the benefits of doing full body workouts, and the full body workouts, they allow you to hit your entire body and to help generate that metabolic effect, full body, all over the entire body, which is just generally good for general physical fitness. However, as you'll find, as your fitness improves and you have the desire to continue getting stronger, building more muscle, you are going to need more volume to be able to facilitate that. And adding more sets and reps and exercises to a full body program can turn that workout into a 2 to 3 hour long session, which is going to have diminishing returns. As the workout goes longer, your intensity is going to decrease. Therefore, an option for guys who are at an intermediate level, i.e. 1 to 2 full years of consistent lifting experience, i.e. you've been lifting most weeks for 1 to 2 years, progressive overload, you have a good program design. It can take a little bit longer, or maybe the 1 year if you're really dialed in with everything, maybe a little longer if you're a little less consistent. But an upper lower or push-pull leg split done 3 to 4 days per week can be ideal for this. Breaking it up into slightly more days than the full body workout routine is going to allow you to split up that volume or the total amount of work you're doing over more days so that each day you're in the gym, you're not spending as much time. So regardless of how you are choosing to split up your workouts, recovery is going to be essential. You want to make sure that you're getting at least 48 hours of recovery in between heavy lifting sessions. Now you can lift more frequently like this. You could potentially do, a few push-ups every single day. You could do some pull-ups, you can do some push-ups, you can do mobility work. You just don't want to be doing the really heavy, intense stuff too frequently. Allow 48 hours to completely recover, especially as an older guy, because you're just not going to have as great a recovery capacity as a younger individual. The other thing is that you want to if you are progressive overload meaning that you are continually adding more weight to the bar every week, or you are keeping the weight the same and trying to perform more repetitions with that amount of weight, and or increasing the number of sets you are doing for the week. There's a variety of different ways to progressively overload, i.e. increasing the amount of stress placed on the body to cause it to then respond by getting stronger, getting more endurance, whatever the positive adaptations that we're looking for. And in the case of strength training, we're either trying to build more muscle or get stronger, or both, right? So if you are progressively doing that and you're really pushing hard, you can't just do that forever and expect to continue getting gains forever and ever and ever and ever and ever, right? In fact, when I was in high school, granted this was doing running, I had no idea how to program and periodize my running. And so I went from running about 9 miles a week, plus basketball and soccer a couple times a week, to, in a period of a year, being all the way up to 50, 60 miles a week sometimes. And initially I was feeling great, but because I never ramped off and deloaded, which is a period of time where you decrease the volume or the total amount of work you're doing and or the intensity of the work you're doing, I never did that. I just kept on ramping up, and all of a sudden my performance started tanking, which was what we're going to talk about in the next section of this video. So if you are progressively overloading yourself like that and you're consistently pushing hard at the gym, every 4 to 6 weeks it's good to plan in a deload. So about every 1 month to month and a half, maybe 2 months at the limit there, is what you want to be factoring in, something where you dial back that volume and intensity. Maybe during this time, go play some other sports, remain active, maybe completely get outside the gym during that time, and do other activities for a 1 week period of time to allow your body, your nervous system, and everything to be able to regenerate and recover. And this way, when you come back to the gym, you'll actually be able to progress even better, and it will prevent you from having the experience that I had where you hit that wall, you crash, and all of a sudden you're really fit, and then it just starts all going downhill from there. The other thing that you want to be doing is 3 to 5 days a week, and I recommend doing some active mobility to kind of warm yourself up before. Don't spend too much time, right? You don't want to get too relaxed. In fact, you want to do stuff that mobilizes yourself. You can even do a warm-up where you're just doing really lightweight with the actual exercises you're doing, and then maybe doing some power stuff to really just kind of hype up your nervous system and get you into that fight or flight state so you can hit the workout hard, and then at the end of the workout doing some stretching to help you recover a little bit faster. And so 3 to 5 days a week doing some mobility can be a great way to help accelerate your recovery. Other ways to help accelerate the recovery is to also be doing walking, right? So you should be walking every single day. At least 20-30 minutes a day is going to help you to recover faster from your more intense workouts, okay? You can also be doing, again, the mobility stuff, hopping on a bike, going for a hike, doing yard work, doing chores around the house. These great ways to stay active while not beating the body down and giving it enough time to recover. So like I said, there's a range in the frequency and the intensity of how you can train. Not everybody's the exact same. We all have different genetic propensities. We also have different environments, right? So if somebody who has a very stressful job, right, or they're working super long hours, they have a very physical job, whatever, might not be able to train as frequently as somebody who has a more chill sort of career that doesn't require, it's not super high pressure and it's pretty routine, right? So what are some symptoms that we can look for that will tell us if we have been training too much? One of them is what I actually experienced in high school when I got into powerlifting, right? So after I had actually gotten some injuries when I was running, and so to stay in shape, I started lifting weights. And then I fell in love with lifting weights and stopped doing the running stuff and instead transitioned to powerlifting. And I kind of applied the same mentality I was with all the running to the powerlifting. I would just do more and more and more and more. And so, and I was following a powerlifting program, but I would always be peaking like every week. I'd hit like a 1 rep max every single time I'd do bench press, right? And what happened over time is that I started feeling, achy in my wrists, in my elbows, right? Even in my shoulders, right? And so that can be a telltale sign that you are lifting heavy too frequently. Instead of lifting heavy all the time, you can have periods where one way that I like to do this is go heavy, you kind of ramp up, you hit a peak, and then the next workouts are going to be more at a moderate intensity, and then at a very low intensity, and then moderate, peak, and going back down the hill like that. And that seems to work much better for me. Other signs that potentially you are training too often, pushing yourself too hard, are decline in mobility with body weight exercises, right? And now, if you train really hard and the day after you're just like really sore, that can be natural that you've lost some mobility, right? But if you don't necessarily feel really sore, you just feel drained and you're just like you've lost the elasticity, because when you train really hard, it can really, it's almost like a sponge, right? You squeeze all that water out, and in order for you to be able to put forth squeeze the same amount of water back out of the sponge, and let's say that for the sake of argument here, water is the energy that you're putting into your workouts, right? So when that sponge is sopping wet and it's full, you can really put in a lot of work into your workout, right? But if you're always squeezing it and you never relax and allow that water to come back in by dunking it back in the tank, allowing yourself to recover, expand like this, then every subsequent one, it's going to be less and less and less, right? You're squeezing that water out, the glycogen is getting depleted out of those muscles, they become more stiff, less pliable, less flexible, and so if you're noticing that, that could be a good sign that you're not allowing enough time to recover. And so instead of maybe doing that hard workout, go for a walk, go for a hike, do some yoga, do some, stretching exercises, gentle stuff that's not taxing the body but still is moving blood and lymphatic fluids throughout the body to help you recover faster. The other one that can be a sign that you're overtraining is if you're having trouble sleeping at night, right? If you're feeling more irritable than normal, and if you are so your motivation to go to the gym is decreasing over time, right? Let's say, for example, a lot of people, when you start out working out, it's hard to get the motivation to go to the gym, right? But once you've gotten a rhythm, then you start to get addicted to it and you start to crave it, right? And now you want to go to the gym. Your body tells you, it's time to train back, right? Because let's say every Tuesday, you're training your back or something, right? And so every Tuesday, without you having to look at your thing, your back muscles are like, oh, time to go train the back, right? And so you start to crave that. If all of a sudden you're in really good shape, and all of a sudden all of your motivation to train, it gets to be a real struggle to get into the gym, that could be a sign that you're pushing yourself too hard and or not fueling your body appropriately, but that's a subject for another video. The other one, and the last sign that you might not be recovering properly, you might be pushing too hard, is that despite pushing really hard, training really hard, eating really well, getting enough sleep, you're just plateaued, you're not getting any better, and maybe you're even starting to get worse. And again, when I was doing the running, that's what happened to me. Instead of getting better, all of a sudden, I started feeling fatigued all the time, I started having a hard time getting motivated to go out for runs, and I started getting slower, and I started to have less stamina, I couldn't run as far, and on it goes. All right guys, so lastly, we're coming to the high rep push-ups portion of this video. So for example, if you're doing 100 push-ups per day, now a lot of people will tend to be like, well, this is more functional and stuff, and it is. There are advantages of doing calisthenics sort of exercises, right? If you want the strongest, biggest chest muscles possible, doing bench presses is going to be, the way to go. However, doing push-ups trains a lot of muscles that doing the bench press does not, right? You are having to keep your core nice and tight. So provided you are doing the push-ups right and you're keeping your form good, it's great for developing core strength, and then also you're in an unstable environment as well, and so you're building up even a little bit of strength in the quads as well, whereas the bench press, you can get a little bit in the glutes and the hamstrings from a little of the arch, and you're pushing your hips through when you're lifting that weight up off the bench. But yes, the push-up is a great exercise, but is doing push-ups inherently better for your joints than doing heavy lifting in the 5 rep range, right? And it actually isn't. In fact, you can be having joint problems with doing lots of repetitions of push-ups if your only goal is to be doing more reps, right? So similarly, as I talked about with doing heavy lifting, if you're not recovering properly in between your workouts. If you're like, well, I'm going to do 100 push-ups every day, but all of a sudden your form starts breaking down while you're doing it because you're fatigued, or even if you are fresh and then your endurance or your fitness level isn't at the level that it needs to be able to do 100 push-ups, then your back starts sagging, your neck starts arching, maybe you're craning your neck like this, or you're sticking your butt way up in the air. These different things can cause you to, you're not pushing all the way up through the top of the movement. These things can all cause you to create more wear and tear on the joints and also cause pain in your lower back. So it's not going to be providing the benefits that you would need. So generally I say it's like, the other thing is that if you're doing 100 reps of push-ups, you have to be thinking, what is the goal that I am training for? Am I training for Guinness Book of World Records? How many push-ups can I do in 24 hours? Am I training to be able to have a lot of endurance for like fighting or something? In those cases, maybe doing 100 reps of push-ups might be a good idea. But if your goal is to build more muscle or get stronger, which is the goal of most guys when they go to the gym to lift weights and stuff, and that's usually the intent of strength training, doing more than like 30 repetitions of any exercise is generally not advisable. It's kind of a waste of time, right? Instead, you want to have progressive overload, adding more weight. Usually, if I'm getting up to that 20 repetitions, I'll often start people off, like in my online hybrid strength program, I start guys off with doing 20 repetitions for their isolation movements like biceps curls, right? And then just keep on adding weight to that until you can no longer do 20 repetitions with good form. And then we start adding more sets with less reps and so on and so forth. But if you can do 20 repetitions of something, that's a good time to add more weight to the bar to continue stimulating yourself. Otherwise, it's going to just be redundant. It starts to become more of a cardio sort of exercise rather than a strength building exercise. Now, one of the things I do like about calisthenics exercises is that as opposed to machine exercises, free weight exercises, they do help you to build a little bit more athleticism, because you have to be able to coordinate your entire body, because you don't have a bench you're on, you don't have something like the bar on your back. To continue to progress, for example, with leg training, you have to be able to balance on one leg with like a pistol squat or something, right? To continue progressing certain things, you have to be able to balance. So not only like you're doing a flag or something with calisthenics, you're not only you're training, like the triceps, your hand strength, you're also training your obliques, your whole side, your lats, a lot of core strength and things like that. So it transfers well over to things like, mixed martial arts, a lot of different martial arts things, just generally being more athletic because the whole body is working together to do these movements. The same thing with a push-up. You're not just training chest, triceps, and triceps in front of your shoulders when you're doing that like you are primarily with the bench press. You're also training a little bit of the thighs. You're training your core to, as long as you're not sagging your back when you're doing it, and it helps you in that regard. And so in this regard, it can be good for developing a little bit more body awareness, proprioception, which can be useful in a real-life scenario to help you maintain that balance and avoid injuries. But doing, 50, 60, 70, 100 reps of something can be a little bit redundant and counterproductive in terms of strength training. And if you are compromising your form to crank out more reps, which is extremely common, especially a lot of martial arts classes you go to for younger kids and stuff, they'll just be contorting your body in all these different angles just to make sure they can get a number of reps the instructor wants them to get, which they'd be far better served if they kept their form crisp, took rests in between every time the form started to break down to get the total number, and only doing the amount of reps that they have actually earned because they can actually do it with good form. All right, guys, that's all I've got to say today about this. If you've got any insights from this, your own opinions, leave those in the comments below. And if you got value out of the video, go ahead and hit the subscribe button in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. And if you would like to see more information regarding workout design for athletic performance, building muscle, dieting for both losing body fat and athletic performance, how to avoid injuries in the gym, and how to work around those injuries should you sustain them, then consider subscribing to the channel by hitting the button in the lower right hand corner of the screen. Hit the like button if you liked the video, and I'll see you all next time for more health and fitness information.